Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, Dynasty League, PPR League, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is up? Welcome to the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Tuesday today here. As well, we're in training camp time. It's training camp mode right now, as everybody's kind of crossing their fingers. Everybody hoping that we make it through training camp cleanly. There's always I've watching NFL Network yesterday. You see the little scroll line on the bottom of the crawl on the bottom of the screen, and it goes injuries, and I'm like, okay, well, it shouldn't be that many. It's only been like a week, for some teams, not even a week for other teams being reported to training camp. And sure enough, it's like, oh, he's banged up out 3 weeks. Oh, he tore his ACL, the cornerback for the Chargers. This and there's a couple more guys like, oh, he's out. He's day to day. He's got a banged up. Like, geez, I think I'm watching I've following all these teams and their own social media accounts. You can kind of figure out where teams are at. Compare, like, okay, are they practicing in pads yet? Are they still just doing walkthroughs? What are they doing? Most teams are in pads already by now, and that's going to lead to some guys getting dinged up already. So this is just the product of the game. So we got to cross our fingers, kind of clinch on for this month of preseason and training camp, and hope everybody. We're not going to single anybody out. We're not going to say, oh, our fantasy players should be healthy. Who cares about the guys we don't really care about? No, everybody needs to stay healthy. As many guys as possible make it through training camp as healthy as possibly as healthy as they possibly can. If I can speak correctly there, but that's something we all hope, and I know it's kind of a pipe dream knowing this sport because of the fact that it's just comes to the territory. But it is what it is, and we'll get through this month as the best we can. So going through it, this you could see the title of this show. It's a veteran value, young gambles. That kind of goes to show how I'm putting that up there because I'm seeing a lot of draft boards and a lot of pre-draft rankings with Deshaun Watson way up in the board, and also with Carson Wentz probably up there as well. I think Carson Wentz has been proven at least a little bit compared to Deshaun Watson, who's played a handful of games. I know he kind of set the world on fire when he did, and it's all about potential. So I can see why some of these boards, of these people who make up these fantasy boards, these rankings, would have Deshaun Watson because his ceiling is just so high already. So the expectations are there, but then also the potential is higher than the expectations because he's so there's so much room for improvement, and there's so much room for him to succeed with his guts and his abilities and his willingness to throw the ball deep and the talent he has around him. He has two very, very good young receivers on either side of the field to to get the ball to. So you have Will Fuller and obviously the Pro Bowler and DeAndre Hopkins. So he's got to have a decision to make. I know with fantasy football, I know we talked about the keeper leagues and stuff like that. I have a decision to make in a couple weeks here because I had DeAndre Hopkins and I had Todd Gurley last year, so I have to decide who I want to keep. I've been saying Todd Gurley this whole time, but I'm kind of wary because it is a PPR, and I could find him probably PPR running back very easily. And DeAndre Hopkins with Deshaun Watson is not a gamble. I don't think Deshaun Watson in himself is probably a gamble. but not DeAndre. DeAndre, I mean, you can call DeAndre Hopkins a veteran by now. He's been in the league for what, 3, 4, or 5 years already now, and he's put up good numbers every year in and year out. So you got to give him some credit, as he's going to be a top receiver. I think he's the number 2 receiver right now in the league, according to most fantasy rankings, with only Antonio Brown ahead of him. So yeah, I mean, what you've been able to see with what he's been able to do with the lackluster quarterbacks that he has had before DeAndre, and then also after DeAndre Hopkins got hurt. I mean, before Deshaun and after Deshaun got hurt, you saw what he's still able to do with subpar quarterbacks. Imagine with a full season with Deshaun Watson. I mean, he's been in the league since 2013. So yeah, 2-time Pro Bowler, first team All Pro in 2017. That's DeAndre Hopkins for you. So I mean, last year wasn't even his best year, unless you want to count last year was is last year 2017, or is last year 2018? I don't know. Football is weird because I think a lot that was last year, because this is a 2018 season technically, and then playoffs obviously happening in 2018, because confusing sometimes when you're like, oh, what year did he make the Pro Bowl? Was it last year? 2017 NFL season? That must have been this. So he was a Pro Bowler last year. I mean, all pro last year, Pro Bowler as well, and so good for him. As with what he's been able to do, like I said, with the lackluster performances at quarterback and guys they've had there, the sky's the limit for him and Deshaun this season down in Houston. I mean, imagine that team. The AFC is pretty weak. I mean, especially compared to the NFC. The NFC has probably 8 different teams that are going to fight for 6 playoff spots. Maybe even 10 different teams that are going to fight for 6 playoff spots this season. I mean, you can go down the list. You could say in the NFC you have the division winners. I mean, you had 3 teams from the NFC South make it last year, with the Saints and who was it? It was Saints and Panthers, and that was it. NFC South, not AFC South. AFC South had the Jags and the Titans last year. No, I'm trying to think of AFC. NFC was the Eagles. Well, I mean, Eagles, Saints, Vikings, Packers, Rams. Panthers. You could throw the Niners in there as well. That's already 7 teams. I'm trying to think of more teams out here that actually want to think they have a contingent. I mean, you could throw the Cowboys in there, Giants in there, the Lions. That's 10. There's going to be a team this year that goes 9-7, maybe even 10-6, and misses the playoffs, and that's going to happen this year. In the NFC, probably it will happen. I mean, you could think about. There's 2 teams in the West, 2 teams in the North, 2 teams in the South, and 2 teams in the East. I mean, that's 8 teams right there. I mean, that's 8 teams. You got, like I said, we could say Giants and Eagles. If you want to throw the Cowboys in there too, you could say Packers and Vikings. You could say Saints and Panthers, and Niners and Rams, because I think the Cardinals are going to take a couple of years to get. I mean, I don't think Sam Darnold's not really going to take. Sam Bradford is not going to take them anywhere. And then when Josh Rosen does get his chance, he'll probably need a few weeks to get accustomed to the speed of the NFL. And then the Seahawks are going to probably have a down year this season, as they are in the middle of kind of reworking their roster. So, I mean, when it comes to this question, do we stick with veteran value? Do we go with the young talent and gamble with the young talent? There's different positions that will dictate that. Obviously, at tight end, like a tight end position, you only have one option, one option to go young. I wouldn't even call him a gamble, because he's really a solid tight end. That's Evan Ingram. He's really the young guy of the group. Everybody else is pretty much are all veterans and guys that have been in the league for a while. If you're going to think about Travis Kelce or Kyle Rudolph, or obviously Gronk. Obviously Jordan Reed. If those might be a gamble. He might be a gamble because he gets injured a lot, but I like Delaney Walker. I'm a big Delaney Walker fan. Love how he gets used in Tennessee. He's great in the play action with Marcus Mariota. Also has a tendency to get back open when Mariota extends plays, and he can find him easily down the field. Great target for the young quarterback. So, I mean, I think the gambles are going to come from the running backs, even though some of them are really not that much of a gamble. I think, obviously, Saquon, even though I talked about Saquon, he's going to be a fine player. I don't think he's going to blow anybody's doors off this season, I don't think, but he's going to be a fine NFL player. He'll put up his points. I don't think he's the next coming of he's not the next LaDainian Tomlinson or something like that, or Adrian Peterson. I don't think he's that at all. So he just did not put up the numbers in college, yards per carry. That transfers to the NFL very, very frequently and very efficiently. Correlates very easily, and commonly will correlate your yards per carry from college to the NFL. And he just didn't have it. He didn't break 3 yards per carry in most of his games last year. So I'm not going to put my eggs in the Saquon basket quite yet. Also, the Giants have a lot of other personalities on that team that need to be fed, or at least one of them. All right. Well, I mean, if you're talking about veteran value, I think Tom Brady might be your best veteran value, because he's a quarterback that you might get a week where they don't throw it as much in New England. You might get a week where he isn't as sharp, or they might just run the ball more in the red zone. But Tom Brady in fantasy can be very good, because they're going to throw. There's going to be weeks when they throw the ball a lot. I mean, there's going to be weeks when he's going to have 3-4 touchdowns. So you take the bitter with the better. Obviously, if you're going to run with Tom Brady, I would have another quarterback in my back pocket. I would have one on the bench just in case when he goes, because like him against the Jets this year, I bet you will have one game where he doesn't do that well, because honestly, the Jets secondary is very good. So that's one I wouldn't probably start him in against the Bills in Buffalo. Actually, I don't know. That's kind of a weird. Usually they start. I feel like 3 years in a row the Patriots have gone to Buffalo. They've started the game trailing, and they've come back to win the game every time. Ugh. So I mean, yeah, you can mix and match. I would just wouldn't start him against like the super top 5 defenses, basically secondaries at least. And the Jets have one. That's not. I don't know about top 5, but they definitely have a good secondary this year, which is anchored by Jamal Adams back there in the secondary at safety. So, I mean, Brady, it's veteran value. I mean, I like him better than Russell Wilson. I mean, other than Russell Wilson, the fact that yes, he can run the ball, Tom. Yes, okay, he's going to get the value points because he's going to run the ball and get 10 yards per point versus 25 yards per point. Brady doesn't really run it, but Brady's going to throw the ball more. He doesn't have one receiver to throw to. Who's the Seahawks? Who are the other receivers in the Seahawks? Did they draft a receiver? How did they not draft a receiver? They drafted Rashad Penny out of San Diego State. How did they not draft a receiver? I mean, they obviously have Doug Baldwin. But I mean, this is interesting. Hold on, I'm looking at the Seattle Seahawks depth chart really quick here. Who's the other receivers? I don't know. They did sign Brandon Marshall. That's it. They have Brandon Marshall and Tyler Lockett and Doug Baldwin. Okay, so Tyler Lockett's still there at least. That's right. Tyler Lockett's still there. They signed Brandon Marshall, who's, I mean, about as close to washed up as you probably can be. And yeah, that's about it. They did get Jaron Brown from Arizona, which is actually not a bad pickup. So, okay. Still not really wowed at all by that there. So, I mean, Russell Wilson versus Tom Brady, if you're really deciding on a quarterback, I mean, it depends. Do you really value the running ability of Russell Wilson? Do you really, I mean, the guy who had Russell Wilson last year had a great regular season in my league, had a great regular season, then he just flamed right. It just took one bad Russell Wilson week. I mean, I can go show you last year this is all Yahoo scoring, so it might be a little differently, but it's pretty much all the same that we do. I mean, we same kind of bonuses and everything. So I'm just trying to see here. What was his? I mean, he had 18. Wasn't in the crunch time game. He had 13 points in the semifinal. The guy needed to win 13.5 points. I mean, he's had an 8-point game, a 7-point game, and another 13-point game mixed in there too. So, I mean, honestly, I'm actually kind of surprised seeing the kind of numbers he did put up in the middle of the year. He actually had a streak of very good games. I have to give him credit. He had about about a seven week streak where he was over his projections. So you can't knock that, I guess. Wow. Surprising. I mean, they were against. I mean, one was against the Giants, worst pass defense. Houston was the second worst pass defense. Then he was against three middle of the road teams, and then the Niners, who had the fifth worst pass defense. Points allowed in fantasy. And then he went to Philly and Jacksonville, put up good points. So I don't know. Russell Wilson maybe is the guy that you should go with. I mean, Tom Brady. I just like Tom Brady better because he can air the ball out a little more. But I mean, they throw it deep there in Seattle. And they have Brandon Marshall, but I just don't think that if I was going to take receivers that are actually going to do well, Jordan Matthews does not get the big splashy signing or trade, but I like what he did in Philadelphia before he went to Buffalo. Then he comes over to New England, and always these receivers they just find in New England end up doing well. So I like Jordan Matthews. All right, that'll wrap it up for this segment. We'll come back and do a couple more players in the next segment. Then we'll do the same thing in the next two, as we are kind of just going through this same topic here, talking just fantasy football for you on a Tuesday. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Tuesday today here, as we're going to do some talk. Continuing what we were talking about before with these veteran value, and whether you're going to stick with the veteran guy or go maybe make a reach for a younger player. I mean, these days, there's so many good young players out there, guys who are going either into their third or second year in the league. I mean, there's even guys there's even rookies this year who I would not be too nervous about taking in this fantasy draft. I mean, later in the draft, of course, I wouldn't reach for a rookie in the top half of the draft, unless, of course, you are the lucky man or lucky guy or lucky girl or lucky woman who gets the draft position where you have to make a decision on taking Saquon Barkley, basically. And that's probably about these, I would say, honestly, my opinion, 9th pick to the 20th pick. Like basically the late first round and all of the second round. You have a decision to make. Do you take Saquon sight unseen, other than college, of course, which doesn't have nothing to do with this at all. It's not. He's playing against men instead of boys now. So, yeah. That's the one thing you have to decide, because he's the only real rookie running back, rookie talent at all that's going to be even considered in the first few rounds of this draft. So decisions. I would say around the 6th, 7th, 8th round is when you're going to start seeing the rest of the rookies probably come off the board, because they're that good. They really are. Rashad Penny's going to get a lot. And the thing is, being good is one thing. Having the opportunity for touches and opportunity to show how good you are is another thing. So Rashad Penny is good. He went to a smaller school. He went to a school not in a Power 5 conference. He's still very good, has had a lot of touches in college, has had experience being every down back, and he's going to be an every down back now again in Seattle. So his while he might not have the best pedigree of, he went to Michigan or he went to Florida State or he went to USC, it doesn't matter. He is going to have the volume, and he's shown the ability to play against these top programs and play well against them in college too. So he should be able to do the same thing. He is one of those high floor, high ceiling guys because obviously you can take it all into account. Take everything into account. Take the fact that he was a record-breaking performer in college. Take it in the fact that he was a first-round pick by a team that's won a Super Bowl, by a GM that's won a Super Bowl, who knows how to draft, who's drafted very well in the past. Well, at least defensively. Well, I mean, did Snyder Johnson, was he there when they picked Russell Wilson? I'm thinking he was. Picking Russell Wilson, but yeah. So they picked this running back late in the first round, so making me feel a little bit more confident on his abilities coming into this season for sure. So that's kind of how you can look at things compared to Saquon. Yeah, he's going to get his touches. I'm trying to think. There's other guys like Ronald Jones, same kind of thing. He's maybe not a first round pick talent in the NFL draft. He's more of a, I would say, 6th, 7th round in fantasy. But there's lots of young talent out there. Lots of young talent. You can even say Derrick Henry is a young talent, even though he's been in the league for almost what's he been in the league for 2-3 years now. So I mean, go if you go, for those who have Instagram, go look at the NFL. I think it's the NFL Instagram account, honestly. And they had a picture of Derrick Henry walking next to Dion Lewis. I never knew Dion Lewis was that small. That guy is small. I know Derrick Henry's large. He is huge. He's like 6'2.5", like 240 or whatever he is. But I think it was the NFL Instagram account had a picture of them walking side by side. Yeah, the NFL account said, plot twist, these guys play the same position, and one's Derrick Henry, and he's literally an entire helmet taller than Dion Lewis. I mean, Dion Lewis, his arms look pretty big, but everything else, he's like just short in stature. I didn't realize D-Lou was so small. I thought he was a little taller. It doesn't matter. He's still a great player. You saw what he did. You saw what he did in New England, and this is exactly what the Titans needed. They obviously DeMarco Murray retires. They still have their ground and pounder there in for the bell cow back, kind of getting running setting the tone with the running game, and then also they could run 2-back sets with Dion back there and throw it out of the backfield. He's going to be a great little weapon for Marcus Mariota to use out of the backfield. So honestly, Dion Lewis, his draft stock goes up in my mind, leaving New England, because New England, while he still was great there, and you just never know which running back's going to get the ball. That's why I think Sony Michel, even though I love him, is probably closer to an 8th round, 9th round pick if you were going to pick him in the draft this year, because it's just a situation where you're not going to get it's unknown. Okay, is he going to get touches or not? Is he going to, because they could throw the ball to James White, they could throw the ball to Saquon Barkley. They could throw the ball to James White, they could throw the ball to Rex Burkhead, they could throw the ball to Sony Michel, they could hand the ball off to any 3 of those guys either. So it's kind of decisions seemingly where you can be. It's a little more predictable of what you're going to see in Tennessee with Derrick Henry getting the ball more on running plays. And then for PPR, I think this is where you're going to see Dion Lewis having his most upside in the PPR leagues, because he's going to be catching the ball out of the backfield a lot this year, as I can guess, because that's what you would think would happen with those two guys working in a tandem there in Tennessee. I mean, there you go. So, I mean, I know they're both of them are pretty, I mean, I wouldn't call them, they're right in the middle there. I mean, Dion Lewis, more of your veteran. I think Derrick Henry, more of your young player, but I wouldn't say Derrick Henry is a gamble, because he's been able to show his talents and his ability to put up numbers in this league and have a good production. So, especially on a good team like the Titans, they just signed their big, I think it was a guard or tackle to a big contract. It became the highest, I think it's Taylor Lewan. Became the highest tackle highest paid tackle in the NFL. Is $80 million contract. Yeah, so with the Tennessee Titans, so you got to like that. I mean, this is a guy who's been able to show upside, because even though he wasn't the biggest, most highly touted player out of Michigan, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler and has really stepped it up since he's been in the NFL. So you got to give him some credit, and he deserves his raise, if you want to call it that, or his new contract, and he's going to help those 2 running backs there put up the numbers that their fantasy owners want him to put up, because He's a mover, even though he's a tackle. So, I mean, yeah, maybe it'll extend plays for Marcus Mariota to get the ball to Dion Lewis in the passing game. So there you go. It always works out that somehow. All right, moving along to another kind of, like we're kind of comping here. Those two guys weren't the best examples of the whole veteran value versus the young gamble versus kind of like I was saying with the Brady versus the Deshaun Watson kind of scenario. But there's going to be situations in Cleveland where you're going to have to. I mean, I don't know if do you stay away from all those running backs. Do you take Nick Chubb? Do you take? Veteran value. Honestly, veteran value right here. Carlos Hyde is the definition of veteran value. Carlos Hyde, actually, even though I wasn't his biggest fan in San Francisco because he just never really hit that next level where he was breaking big plays. Like he never really got like Zeke has shown me more in his short career more than Carlos Hyde. Even though yes, he's been on some bad. He's had some bad teams or bad rosters around him for sure. But you see, he didn't stick around very much and didn't stick around to see the new era there in SF. So he's going to have to figure it out in Cleveland. Takes a big deal, takes a 3-year contract with the Browns. And you're going to have to sit, like you said, do you take Nick Chubb? Do you take Saquon? Do you take Carlos Hyde? Because they're pretty much the same style back. I mean, maybe Carlos is a little bit more finesse back. Chubb is a little more of a power back. But then they also have Duke Johnson there who's going to be catching the ball out of the backfield a lot more, I think, than those other two guys because he's more that scat back kind of situation, kind of scenario where he's a little more elusiveness, has a little more elusiveness and better hands. Carlos Hyde had, I think it was like I don't know what they call them, brick wall or something like that, or brick hands, as he couldn't catch the ball. couldn't catch the ball in the backfield. Had a lot of trouble with that last year. But I mean, he put up some good numbers in fantasy. Had some decent weeks. Was never really that enamored by him. It was too much. But looking at watch him have like good numbers all year. Just very volatile. I mean, he had a day with 2.8 points, backed it up with a 24-point performance. Then he was injured against Jacksonville, came back in Cincinnati. Yeah, I mean, it's not my favorite guy. I'm trying to think of who they played here. So, I mean, what? Wasn't he on the Niners last year? I don't know why he's showing me all these weird teams of the points that he put up. Maybe it's just showing the Browns schedule. That's weird. I'm trying to look at his points right now from last year, and they're pulling it up, but they're not giving me the right schedule, which is kind of weird. Because he was in the Niners last year, and put up good numbers with the Niners, but that was about it. I mean, he had a couple good weeks, but that's not against the right teams. I don't understand. That's not. They didn't play Pittsburgh to open up the season. Yeah, they're giving me the Browns schedule. I don't know if it's the right points or not because that's weird. Yeah, weird. I mean, Carlos Hyde's a rookie. I mean, Carlos Hyde's a veteran value. I think you can go if you want to. If the thing is, it's your trade-off. Veteran value, rookie gambles, young gambles with Nick Chubb, or do you want that veteran value with Carlos Hyde? And then obviously them being on the same team will help you decide that too, because you can get kind of a gauge on who's going to get the ball, more of the carries, and you could look at the depth chart and listen to some sound or interviews with Coach Hugh Jackson, so you can kind of get a little bit of an idea of who's going to hit the bulk of the carries this season in Cleveland. Moving on, I mean, more guys. There's always more guys, obviously. So another young gamble who I think is going to have major upside this year coming off an injury is Corey Davis. There's other more veteran guys I know out there with receiver-wise, like Emmanuel Sanders or Martavis Bryant, who I actually really like, even though he might get suspended this season, but Martavis Bryant or something like that. But there's all these big receivers, and you kind of forget about Corey Davis because he was a rookie last year, was a high draft pick last year by the Titans, and they got hurt, but he actually did come back during the playoffs and played pretty well. So like Corey Davis, make sure you keep an eye out for him, as he could be an early 3rd round, 4th round pick, and end up putting the numbers up that would correlate to that, because that's the kind of the guy he's going to be treated like in Tennessee as their I think he's going to be the number 1 receiver. I mean, looking at their depth chart, If he's not number one, he's number two, and he's on the other side of the guy who's number one. I couldn't imagine anybody who's ahead of him right now on that depth chart. So I'm just pulling this up really quick. Yeah, Corey Davis number one, Rashard Matthews number two, and Tywan Taylor. So yeah, he's number two. He's number 1B or one. I would say 1B if you're going to say Rashard Matthews 1A. It's basically this left who lines up on the left, who lines up on the right. They probably flip flop is how they list it on the depth chart. All right. That'll wrap it up for the show, for the segment today. Segment for right now. We'll come back after the break and continue our talk on this young gamble versus veteran value players. Who do you want to roll with this season in the in your fantasy football leagues? Do you do a mixture of both? Do you kind of skew one way or the other, or how? What's your strategy this year? And we're going to try and talk you through it right now on the show. So everybody, stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA Podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Tuesday today here as we're talking young gambles versus veteran value on the show today here. As you know, there's always a gamble with the younger players, also a gamble with guys coming off injuries. I know Carson Wentz coming off injury is less of a gamble in my mind because of the fact that he has had more time to rehab it. I mean, Deshaun got hurt first. I mean, he's had more time to rehab, but his is a second occurrence. He's already had a knee injury in college. I mean, you could take that any way you want. You can say, oh, he knows the rehab. He's used to it. He should be able to do it just fine. Oh, this is a wear and tear situation where you're kind of seeing that there's a trend. He's getting hurt a lot more versus Carson Wentz. Okay, he gets hurt, but he's a young, big body guy, got lots of muscles, going to heal really fast, got a great work ethic, and rehab it all back fine. Okay, well, it's their knees, and they're both mobile quarterbacks. Both guys are going to run around a lot and try and extend plays in the pocket, outside the pocket, run for positive yards, whatever it might be. And there's going to be a lot of stress, and people are going to be watching Texans fans and Eagles fans with bated breath, as well as fantasy owners, to see how those two perform because they're both top. I mean, some have them top 5. Both, I think, right now off the injury, you'd put. I actually like Carson Wentz better than Deshaun Watson a little bit because of the fact that he's had the experience further down the field. Further down, he's also put up more touchdowns than him, and I think he has more room to put up more touchdowns because of the team the Eagles have and the running backs they have and they help balance their offenses. And Deshaun might be getting in a scenario this year where it's going to be him or nothing kind of a scenario where I know they still have Donta Foreman, but they also have Lamar Miller, who is kind of underwhelming. So whether it's going to be just the Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins show remains to be seen. In Philly, it's going to be the Carson Wentz and the who am I thinking? Alshon Jeffrey and the Jay Ajayi and the Corey Clement and did Trey Burton leave? Trey Burton left, didn't he? But no, so they're just fine in Philadelphia, and they also have the defense to back it up that stays healthy, tendency to stay healthy versus the Texans defense, which is supposed to be just as good, but just can't stay healthy. If you can keep JJ healthy, you can keep Jadeveon Clowney healthy and Whitney Merciless and all those guys in the backfield healthy, the Texans can be pretty nasty. I mean, you have to watch out for the Texans in that I wouldn't call the AFC South winnable anymore. It used to be very winnable. The Jacksonville Jaguars, you got to give them credit. They have really they did lose 2 receivers this year, but their receiving core actually was super sleepy, underrated last year. I mean, you had the injury to Allen Robinson. Then you had Hearns, who produced. You had Marquise Lee produced. You had Keelan Cole produce. I'm trying to think of the other guy they had there in that receiving core for the Jaguars. There was another guy. I said Keelan Cole, didn't I? But so that's going to be they're going to run with that this year kind of scenario with an extended Blake Bortles, who with that running back situation with Leonard Fournette, he is in the perfect scenario where he doesn't really have to do too much. He can be a game manager. He can afford to be a game manager with that defense and with that running game. They can win a lot of games like they did last year, and even when people expect it. I mean, last year maybe people were a little surprised. That franchise has been really down their dumps for a while. And they come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, oh wow, their defense is really good. They got Malik Jackson over from the Broncos. They draft well, and they also got some other players from other teams as well, like Deshaun Gibson and others. So I mean, if they have some talent. Obviously, we saw it last year, Jacksonville, but head to head, they played the Texans twice. And it's going to be those are going to be some fun matchups, actually, which once used to be a kind of a sleepy. Nobody's going to watch this Texans and Jags versus now this year. It's probably going to be one of the better matchups of the year, especially if everybody's healthy coming into the game. So that's going to be a fun one to watch. I mean, the AFC, we've always said it's kind of top heavy. Steelers, Patriots, that's about it. I mean, Jacksonville, yeah. The AFC West is still kind of figuring itself out with seeing if who's going to be there's 3 teams that did massive wholesale changes. I wouldn't say, but yeah, wholesale changes to at least to one position or 2. I know that obviously the Broncos have a new quarterback, so do the Chiefs. That's a question. There you go. You could throw Deshaun Watson in there. He's proven a little bit, but then what about Patrick Mahomes? Patrick Mahomes, a lot of people have them in the top 15 quarterbacks in the league for fantasy because he's got a big arm. He's got great weapons around him. He's a good young running back. He's got a great head coach. Everything's kind of pointing the same way. And the Chiefs, for some reason, are projected at 7-9 for this season coming into this year because of people thinking that, the young quarterback's not going to be able to do as much as he can. Well, I think the young quarterback's going to be able to have more guts. He's going to have more they put everything kind of behind him. They traded up to draft him, so his job really isn't in quote unquote jeopardy. So he has the ability to maybe be a little more risk taker this year, throwing the ball deep, seeing what his receivers can do for him because he's got some decent receivers on that Chiefs team. And you get Sammy Watkins over there. You still have Tyreek Hill on that team. I mean, you kind of have to like what they have going on there. Obviously, you can throw the ball out of the backfield to Kareem Hunt all he wants, and they're also going to make it easy for him because I think they're going to be able to run a lot of those run pass option plays where they're going to be able to either hand it to him or let him keep it or give it to Kareem Hunt, or he can run it himself if he wants to. So I mean, they have Chris Conley, I like Chris Conley. Tyreek Hill and Sammy Watkins, it's a pretty good little receiving core there to start off your year for the Kansas City Chiefs. So in an AFC West, like I said, the Raiders could be underwhelming this year as they're starting to kind of figure out their with the new coach and John Gruden coming out of the broadcast booth to coach the Raiders again. The Chargers are probably the most talented roster in this division, but they just lost one of their big cornerbacks. I know they have to kind of have a next man up mentality. You got a whole month to figure out who's going to play in place of him. Whether you're going to sign somebody maybe. So I think the Chargers will be fine because their main stuff is going to be pass rush and run defense for the Chargers because they're very good up front with Joey Bosa, and then obviously I'm trying to think of who's the other. Ingram is the other linebacker there for them. Melvin Ingram for that team. So you gotta like what they have going on there in Los Angeles. I was going to say San Diego. It's Los Angeles, as we've had a year now with those two teams in LA. If you want to go, I'm sure you can go search on Google Los Angeles Stadium live cam or something like that, as they're still tinkering away at the old Hollywood Park location for that new stadium in LA, as it's going to be down in Inglewood. Also building the stadium in Las Vegas. It's kind of a race to see who's going to. I think are they both due to finish by? I think it's two more seasons in the Coliseum for the Raiders, or one more. I'm trying to think when they're going to be moving for this. So we'll come back after the break. I'll probably give you the definitive stuff. I could look it up for sure, but. Tom, this is a fantasy show. This isn't the stadium update show. Okay, fine. Well, this Chargers, fantasy-wise, they're going to be interesting this year. That's another question mark. In the division, Phillip Rivers, Patrick Mahomes, if you're like looking for a secondary quarterback, I mean, I don't think you're going to have either of them start unless you're like in some crazy big league. But those are both guys that could be good options to have on your bench to be a mix and match kind of backup. And you have to make a decision. Young gamble, veteran value. I think Phillip Rivers honestly offers a great veteran value, but Patrick Mahomes is a great young gamble because he has a major upside. The risk is high, but the upside is very high as well. Versus Phillip Rivers, the risk is not very high, and the upside can be mediocre to high for you this season. So you can take your opportunity cost and try and analyze it there with those two players as we come closer to the draft week by week. So that's kind of your decision to make there in the AFC West in my mind. You have also Case Keenum. I wouldn't really say he's a fantasy quarterback. And then Derek Carr. Hopefully, maybe like me, you have a Raider fan in your team who's going to pick Derek Carr every year as his quarterback. Derek Carr, honestly, with the kind of reloaded offensive core they have now with Martavis Bryant and Jordy Nelson, and obviously still having Amari Cooper, looking to him to have a bounce back year. I like Jalen Richard in the backfield still with Marshawn Lynch, I know. And then I think they still have Jared Cook as their tight end. So you got to like that if you are a Raider fan and if you're looking to draft Derek Carr. Because, I mean, if he can stay healthy and that defense is going to back it up. I mean, the thing is, the problem last year was the fact that they had no secondary. They didn't have any secondary. It was a very porous secondary that they had last year. I mean, looking at their depth chart for at least on offense. So yeah, Cooper, Nelson, Bryant, and then it's their number one running back is actually going to be Marshawn Lynch, Doug Martin, and Jalen Richard. I don't know. I think Jalen Richard's going to end up getting the most of the carries this year. So I think Marshawn's kind of a retread a little bit. I think, honestly, coming back a little renaissance last year was underwhelming. Then they get Doug Martin, who's a definition of a retread, and then Jalen Richard, who I think is the real talent in that running backs room, is put as the number three running back. So it is what it is for the Raiders. We'll see how it gets shaked out. And the new coach. The returning head coach for the Oakland Raiders, John Gruden, coming back with a 10-year deal. That's another interesting thing that's going on there. But it is what it is with the Raiders. They're going to make their decisions. They're going to obviously trying to keep some continuity going towards Vegas, as they will be moving over there. I think isn't it after this year? Or is it after next year? They're building the stadium right now. They got a whole year to build the stadium. So, I mean, how long does it really take to do that? I mean, seemingly sometimes it takes longer or goes faster. I mean, it's all scheduled out regarding how much they can do in a short period of time. I mean, going over to the NFC side of things, on the NFC West, I know we talked about a little bit with the Seahawks and Russell Wilson. I would say Jimmy G is another one of those. I mean, is he? He's a gamble. I would say young gamble. He would fall into that category because he's not quite a veteran. He's not a veteran yet. I know he's shown flashes of excellence in this league, but there's always going to be speculators out there. There's always going to be guys who are like, oh no, that was just flash in the pan. The defenses weren't going to key. Okay, well, I've told you on the show multiple times. I know I'm a Niner fan, but I'm telling you, it's not this all Niner fan stuff aside. Yes, the only team they played last year in the 5-game stretch that was that pulled their starters were the Rams, the last game of the year. That was it. The Rams did, because literally they didn't have to play. They already clinched the playoffs. The Titans, when they played them, nope. They had not clinched the playoffs yet. They were still fighting for a seed. The Jaguars, nope. Had not clinched the playoffs yet. We're still fighting for a seed. Could have got the second seed. Could have got a bye if they won that game. Well, they didn't. The Jimmy G carved them up. Carved up the defense. You saw it. Watch the film. Watch how much those tight windows. He beat Telvin Smith. He beat Jalen Ramsey. I mean, it's happened. You've seen it. That's on film. And so, I mean, there's different ways to skin a cat, obviously, in the NFL. But Jimmy G is going to be a key for the Niners this year. I think he's going to be an interesting little fantasy quarterback, and probably watch his ads really shoot up by week. I mean, I know the top half of their schedule is really tough. So, I've been looking at the Niners schedule for this season. I mean, I know you open up in Minnesota. That'll be a tough one. And then you have the Lions, the Chiefs, Chargers, Cardinals, Packers, Rams within your first. That's your first 6 weeks right there. So that's a good. I mean, the thing is, hopefully everybody's healthy coming out of the preseason and everything, because you're going to get the bang. You're going to get punched in the mouth right at the beginning of your schedule, and then it really, really evens out the rest of the year, because then you're going to go after that Rams game. You're going to have the Cardinals, who I don't think are going to be very good this year. The Raiders at home, Giants at home, which is going to be, I mean, you should be able to win that game. Bucks on the road, you should be able to win that game. Seahawks, Broncos at home, you should be able to win that game. Seahawks at home, Bears at home, and then you go to the Rams. So you should win those home games, especially against the Bears and Giants and the Seahawks too. So, I mean, the Niners and Jimmy G, like I said, they could be good. Jimmy G could be a fantasy guy. You could turn into that veteran value very soon. All right, that'll do it for this segment. We'll come back and finish up the show with the final segment of the day today, as we'll cover the same thing. We're rolling right along with the same topic here, kind of bouncing around the divisions and different conferences, finding different kind of disparity comparisons to go and see trading off by different draft position in league. I know we're sticking with we've done a lot of quarterbacks. We'll probably switch it over to maybe receiver or to a tight end as well in this final segment. So everybody stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, welcome back to GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast on a Tuesday today here, as we're going to finish up our show with some more talk on our veteran value players and our young gamble players, as there are a lot of both out there in the league this year. I mean, Jordy Nelson, is that a veteran value player? I would say Martavis Bryant's more of a veteran value player, even though he's younger and he's been in the league for a while, and Jordy is maybe reaching the end of the value stage. Yes, he's still a very good veteran, but I don't know. I don't think you're going to get much value out of Jordy Nelson this season. Players that you could get value out of that are veterans coming into this year is going to be Pierre Garcon, because Pierre Garcon is going to have Jimmy G, and I think he's going to be very good. He didn't play with Jimmy G last year. He had that neck injury. He's healthy now. He's coming in ready to go this season, and I think with a full season of Jimmy G, he should. You saw what he did with Peyton Manning, right? In Indianapolis, he was very good in his short intermediate routes. Peyton was great with those. Jimmy G is great with those. Very accurate, finding in between the defenders. So you're going to have. I mean, the Niners, honestly, I know I'm not trying to fanboy here a little bit. This is honest to goodness fantasy stuff. Niners have a very interesting little receiving core, which is why I'm not like super mad they didn't go after Allen Robinson too hard, because you have a chain mover, possession guy in Garcon. You have a quick, young running back, quick young. I know he's a little undersized, but quick young guy on the other side is going to take the top off the defense. That's Marquise Goodwin. You have a slot receiver and Trent Taylor, who's going to be very, very good quickness. I actually like him in the third down, and in the third down as well, especially short yardage third down. And then you drafted Dante Pettis, who's going to kind of do the same thing, except maybe a little bit more, extending it down the field a little bit more with his speed. And then also you have a guy who is going to fly way under the radar. And honestly, if I might pick him up, especially by week 3 or 4, when they start getting a little easier in the schedule by the middle of the year. Kendrick Bourne. Don't forget that name. Write that name down. Kendrick Bourne went to Washington State, which is a massive air raid school, which with Coach Mike Leach. Loves to throw the ball. Kendrick Bourne has great hands, knows how to run, runs great routes. This is a guy who's got good size, has good in the middle ability, so he's going to be kind of that intermediate route guy where he's going to be over the middle of the field a lot, running those kind of post routes. So if the Niners want to go for receivers with some speed, you can still have. That's 5 guys right there who I think are going to be solid. I know one's a rookie, and you have the veterans on the other side of on the outside as well. You can call Goodwin. I would call Goodwin a veteran. He's been on. This is his second team in the league now. And then Garcon, obviously a veteran. Trent Taylor, he's a second-year player. Kendrick Bourne's a second-year player, and you got the rookie. So you got some good young talent and some good veteran talent on that receiving core for the Niners. And Jimmy G, he's like an X-Acto knife with the ball and the intermediate passes. So those guys are all going to be I think those guys are perfect for him coming into this year. Looking around the league here, it's kind of interesting because you have some trade-offs, obviously. Especially even in the first round, you have trade-offs. You have Ezekiel Elliott versus Saquon Barkley. You have David Johnson versus Saquon Barkley. I would say I wouldn't say Gurley or Bell. I think they're more closer to the top half of the draft. But I would say Kareem Hunt versus Saquon Barkley. Kareem Hunt, honestly, coming into the second year isn't going to be considered in that veteran value. He could still be considered a young gamble because he kind of fell off a little bit at the end of last year, or maybe in the middle. He kind of picked it up at the end, but in the middle of the year, he kind of disappeared for all of a sudden. And then Saquon, obviously, we have no idea. Really, do you have an idea? You can think of an idea. You say, "Oh, he's gonna be great." I saw what he did. Wasn't really that enamored by it. Yeah, I know he lifted a bunch of weights and he ran really fast and he did all this stuff in his shorts. How about when he's got DeMarcus Lawrence coming after him, or Parrish Cox, or he's got Jalen Mills on the outside coming down, crashing on run support. I'm just like, actually, the guy who I'm sure he's going to love the most is why can't I think of his name every time? Safety for the Eagles. Why can't I think of his name? Every single time. He's Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins is going to be Saquon Barkley's favorite person this year because I think Malcolm's going to hit him in the mouth like 3 or 4 times this year, I think, because they play him twice, obviously. Eagles, Giants. And honestly, I'm watching it. I'm actually excited the Niners are playing the Giants this year because I want to see Saquon. I want to see what he can do. I'm really excited. I kind of want to be wrong. I kind of want to be right. I want to see him struggle. I don't want to wish any negativity, but I think that he's getting overhyped. He's way overhyped. Way overhyped. You saw what Zeke did in college. You saw what Christian McCaffrey did in college. You saw what the other guys. You can look at Kamara's numbers in college in Tennessee. Even though he's going to catch the ball, he's catching the ball out of the backfield more often. He's running more routes. But that's why I think if Saquon's going to do something that's going to really help him move along in this league, it's going to be catching the ball out of the backfield. And that's why I think they couldn't pass up on him because you're basically drafting 2 players. You're drafting a receiver and you're drafting a running back at the same time. So I think that, especially the way this league's going, especially the way that the Giants kind of figure with their quarterback situation, you want to give Eli Manning. I say Peyton all the time. Eli, the most easiest throws possible. You're going to have a target in your running back there, and hopefully Saquon. I hope Saquon does well. Honestly, they play in the NFC East. The Cowboys are in the division. I would love to see him as a run up and down on the Cowboys, and then have a bad day against them. That's like fair. Tom, you can't just pick. You have to be kind of neutral, don't you? Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm neutral. neutral in my stance on Saquon at this point. I guess I'm just not a fanboy on Saquon. I'm not a fanboy on Odell Beckham. I think that let's talk about. I mean, he's not really a gamble because he's going to get his numbers, but I'm just not. He's not a winner. He doesn't really translate to wins for me. He hasn't translated to wins for the Giants at all in the last few years either. So there you go. I mean, he was healthy. And then he wasn't, obviously, last year. And they still only won 2 games. Not like they were on a roll, and then all of a sudden he gets hurt, and they tank. But no, they were tanking from the beginning when he was still on the team. So yeah, that goes to show you that what's going on there. So I mean, that's kind of the situation. Looking around here, we have I talked about Corey Davis. I would say he's only a gamble because of the injury. He's a great big receiver. I mean, I think he's going to be just fine if he's healthy. If you're looking at other veteran receivers, obviously, there's guys like Adam Thielen, guys like Stephon Diggs, who actually I would still consider young, but not really gambles. Those are guys who are going to probably have the most value. Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas have a new quarterback in Denver. I still just Case Keenum does not really do much for me. Obviously, him at altitude might help him a little bit, but then also might come back to bite him. The ball will sail on him a little more than he wants. It might sail into the arms of a defender. So you never know. You never know. All right. That'll wrap it up for the show today. We'll cut it right here as we have been talked out on all this value stuff as we come to closer and closer to our draft days. Like I said, Labor Day is a perfect day to draft. It's before the season starts. It's after the preseason's over. It's right there. It's a day off for everybody. It's a holiday. So I mean, if you're not having a barbecue or a party, maybe have a barbecue party for your fantasy draft. So as I'm saying, Labor Day is where I believe that's the day I'm drafting as well. Or maybe the day after. So definitely like to wait as long as I possibly can before we draft. So everybody have a good Tuesday. We'll be back on Thursday for another edition of the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. So we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.